Thank you, sir, for your insights. Ladies and gentlemen, every milestone in an institution journey is marked by a moment when thought transforms into vision. Today, that moment comes through our Foundation Day lecture titled Creativity to Creations for Community and Commerce. We are deeply honored to welcome our chief guest, Professor Prabuddha Ganguli, CEO of Vision-IPR, an eminent academic, industrial leader, and globally respected authority on intellectual property rights and knowledge management. A distinguished alumnus of Bombay University and IIT Kanpur, he earned his PhD in chemistry from Bombay University for research at the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, followed by a postdoctoral work in Germany and Canada. With a career spanning over 4 decades, Professor Ganguli has contributed extensively to both academia and industry, serving at Hindustan Lever Limited and Unilever PLC before founding Vision-IPR in 2001. Since then, he has been a consultant to the World Intellectual Property Organization, advisor to government worldwide, and has served Government of India in multiple prestigious capacities, including as honorary scientific consultant to the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor. He has authored 6 books, published extensively, and earned numerous national and international honors, including Lifetime Achievement Award from Legal Era and IP Legends Award in 2023. Professor Ganguly's lifelong work, bridging creativity with innovation and knowledge with impact, stands as an inspiration for community, commerce, and nation building. His lecture today will illuminate how ideas evolve into tangible creations and that shape society, address challenges, and open doors to future opportunities. It is with great pride and anticipation that we welcome Professor Prabuddha Ganguli to deliver the Foundation Day lecture. Sir, please.
Slide. Well, a very good afternoon to all of you. I must confess that the last 10 or 15 hours that I've been here, a strange vibration is going on. I'm feeling a very strange vibration, and there seems to be a resonance between that vibration and what's going on inside. So there is complete, resonance of what's happening here, and I can feel the pulse with which this institution was set up. Interestingly, in the title of this institution, you find it does not say Institute of Technology, it says Academy of Technology, which is really unique. And the word academy actually connotates something more than an institution. And what Professor Prabuddha spoke about, especially in the Chora, right, which is very exciting. And you think about it think about it intensely. You will find that we are not talking about human engineers, but we are talking about humane engineers. And that's something which AI will never take over. So you're talking about humane engineers and not human engineers. Humans, everybody will, but humane is a set of values. So the value of the institution will go up without compromising values. The value goes up without compromising values, which is what I've learned in the last few hours. Thank you very much. And the way Good day. So now, what I thought we would do is take you through a journey of what I call as creativity, which is very innate in all of us. So creativity is in all of us, but very few of us use that creativity to create. So hence, I said creativity to creations. Now we do, many of us are involved in creations, but very few of those actually, go into the community and go into commerce. So it's something that is challenging, and this is something that will never end. And therefore, I thought the best way to start is to recall some of the extraordinary thought processes that ignited several minds maybe 100 odd years ago. And I couldn't find a better person to emulate than Swami Vivekananda. Education is not the amount of information that is put into your brains and runs right there, undigested all your life. We must have life building, man making, character making, assimilation of ideas. You've assimilated 5 ideas and made them your life and character. You have more education than a man who has by-hearted a whole library. Very significant statement made by Swami Vivekananda at least 100 odd years ago. Very, very important out there. Let's go further. I thought I will start this whole process by putting a quiz to all of you, just to stir up our thought processes to start with. And then we realize what is this creativity to creations to things. So I'm putting up a quiz which I want you to look at very intensely, and I'm going to ask you a few questions before I start the talk. Please note these figures. I'll give you 10 seconds to note this figure, these set of figures. Please note them. I assume all of you have seen this. And now, look at this. Look at this figure. I go back, look at this figure. Right? And my question to you is, what's the difference between this figure and this figure? Anyone in the audience? Just anyone. This figure and this set of figures. Any idea? Just a one-line answer. Anybody? Sorry?
It is more simpler than these.
This is simpler. Yes, you're absolutely correct. But what is that simplicity? You're right. It's simpler. But what is that simplicity? Look at this. Look at this. There is no bend. Absolutely correct. Number one. Any other difference? You're right. See, this is also telling us that a problem has many angles to it. This is one part. Anything else? Look at this. Look at this. Sorry? Which one? This one? Okay. Yes, it is true. Correct. Anything else? This is. You see this part? He is telling you that this part, right? These two parts are longer than that part, and they're equal. Here, this one is up, one is down, you can see, and including the bend. Now the interesting part. These are paper clips. So the paper clip got a patent in the US in 1903. And why was paper clip invented? Because you wanted to keep papers and just put the clip, right? So what was the problem with this clip? And what problem was solved by this clip? Clearly, this set of clips, if you put the paper, you put it in, and you try to bring the clip out, it will tear the paper. And believe it or not, this simple thing, which you said is the improvement right from here, 1903, 1994, took 90 years to grow the two ends of the clip by just a millimeter or two. 90 years. Everybody used the clip, but it took 90 long years to get a clip that would not tear a paper. That's innovation. So, mind you, innovation is a lot of common sense, which is most uncommon. Tells you from this simple example. So you don't have to go to the moon to do innovations. Simple things like this are good enough. So this tells us observation is very important, and then converting that observation using your creative elements into creations, and this is for community. All of us use it even today. Right? Extensively used. So this is something which is so important. One of the simplest examples I can sort of give you that all of us are so familiar with, and there was no reason for 90 years to have gone to do this. So now, what I want to do is therefore go and expand on this concept. And therefore, we have, how do you have? You have ideas. So you need ideas. You dream to get ideas. You convert them into creative endeavors. You convert those creative endeavors into innovations. And when does it become an innovation? When it actually diffuses into society. Otherwise, it remains as a creation. It becomes an innovation only when it serves the needs of a society. Otherwise, it's not an innovation. So therefore, your thoughts, which are intangible, become tangibles. So you go from thoughts to tangibles, and that goes into the marketplace. Right? That's what innovation is all about. And therefore, you touch the community. Because if it doesn't go into the marketplace, you don't touch the community. Marketplace does not mean you have to only make huge profits. Marketplace means give it so that it reaches the people. Maybe at a cost. Why not? So that is that part. And therefore you do a value creation with the convergence of knowledge, and you convert them into knowledge assets. The knowledge becomes value. It attains a value, and when the value goes, is something that is tradable, that value, that knowledge becomes a knowledge asset. Otherwise, it just remains as knowledge. Very important. And there's the innovation value chain. So this is extremely important for us, especially when we are doing technical education and others, to recognize something like that. And therefore, I come to, and this is where expression and language becomes very important, which has been alluded to by the previous speakers. So I'm saying from an inquiring mind, you then go into an inquiring mind. Right? So your inquiry becomes an inquiry. And therefore you look into it and says how you go about. So the type of questions that you put forth, a whole range of questions, and the previous speaker alluded to the term called curiosity. That's where the term curiosity comes in, urge to know, and framing the questions to seek the right type of answers. Very important out there. And therefore, you will find that the whole sense of observation, sensing, feeling, and converting that feeling into an action and thought process is something which is fundamental and important. You cannot be a good engineer unless you have them all together. And therefore I thought, let us ask a question, set of questions. Like we can do this by looking about the history and geography and sociology in our planet, of history and geography that does not exist anymore, of the past. And a whole range of questions can be asked. How do we find out what we were in the past or what was there a few million years ago? And when you do that, very interestingly, the whole field of what we think of paleontology actually is a mix of all sorts of sciences put together, including data science and AI, where you do all the things together, you collect all the information, process them to go back and try and give through a predictive model as to what the past was. I just want to quickly trace the last 2 million years. And if you look at the 2 million years ago, what were we? Basically, what we were is we were using raw materials. The whole concept of using these raw materials and agriculture slowly came about. Movement agriculture came about. Communities got built around it. And as communities got built around that, coexistence with nature and hunting society and agriculture put all of things together. And the human society at that particular point in time started building implements, etc., asking the right type of questions, feeling the environment and taking it further. Then from there, we came to, from this part, we came to development of irrigation to increase productivity. So again, asking the right questions and trying to find solutions to those questions. That's what innovation is all about. So if I didn't have enough water, I needed irrigation. If I couldn't plow, if I wanted to get a higher productivity, I had to plow. So a whole range of those type of things, and therefore what you came in with these at that particular time. Now look at this area, copper, bronze, wheel, iron, paper making, etc., all this is about 3000 BC. So people started thinking about it, how to address issues that were unaddressed in the past. Then came in a breakthrough in 1451 on printing, and the printing press was invented by Gutenberg in a place called Mainz. That's the city where I did my postdoc, actually, out there. Interestingly, when printing was invented, the entire gamut of communications changed completely. The human society behaved, the whole behavioral aspects and the growth of human societies and change completely changed. So you can see each one of these that one thought about, converted that. So the thought became a creation, creation went into society, made a complete change in the whole process. Then came in the Industrial Revolution. And in the Industrial Revolution, a whole range of very major breakthroughs took place. Steam engine, etc. I won't go into details. All of you are familiar. But the whole process is the evolution of the human mind and addressing the unmet needs of society, which means people felt that there were unmet needs. People used their thought processes to address those unmet needs, and that gave rise to a whole bunch of innovations that proceeded. So that's the industrial, and new devices, new materials, etc. came about at that particular stage. And then came in the whole area of where computation or computers came into existence, and a whole range of information products, etc., started evolving out of that. Interestingly, at this stage, somewhere around this time, this is now traveling all the way from 2 million years to somewhere here. And this is where I'm talking about 1970s, 70s and 80s. A major breakthrough took place. One of the Indian professors who was then doing his research in the US made a major breakthrough. The name of this professor was no more, a very close person who considered me almost as his younger brother. He went from Calcutta to US. His name is Professor Ananda Chakraborty. Professor Ananda Chakraborty was the first person who created a man-made bacteria. And why did he create a man-made bacteria? The first time he created a man-made bacteria. And why did he create a man-made bacteria? Because he said there are so many oil spills. So if he can make a bacteria which can metabolize the oil and eat up the oil, then he can release that. It will all eat up the oil, collect the bacteria, the oil spill will be gone. He created that. He was the first person to have created that sort of a stuff. And then, because it's an invention, he applied for a patent to protect his invention in the US. The law is always behind technology. So this advancement in knowledge took place by Ananda Chakravarti. He applied for a patent in the US. The US patent law at that point in time, which is strongly based on biblical principles, said you cannot take possession. Patent gives you possession of your invention. You become a proprietor. It becomes your property. So said, well, are you taking the place of God? Are you taking the place of God? And it went against the principles of law as it existed then. To cut a long story short, the whole matter went up to the US Supreme Court. And in 1981, the Supreme Court in the United States actually gave a decision in favor of Professor Ananda Chakravarti. The patent law changed, and he got the first patent in the world for a created new life form. So he completely changed the thought processes around the world. A phenomenal person. I was very close to him and I've seen him at very close quarters. A phenomenal person. So that's what happened there, and biotechnology was born. And investors came and invested strongly in biotechnology as an industry. You can see how a thought process can completely change the entire scenario out there. So again, from creativity to creation to going to the community and to the marketplace. Here's an example of that. So that happened there. And then, of course, a whole range of biotechnology and others happened. But the interesting part, Internet of Things, which all of you are familiar with. What I'm saying is that we have not, though the world says that there's a Society 5, my contention is that we have jumped. We didn't go to Society 6, we have jumped to Society 7. We've actually made a completely different target. And what have we done? And if you look at the present, this is the era of synthesis of things. When I say synthesis of things, you come here, there is whole area, and I touched this briefly, even though we are in a room full of engineers and others. Very interestingly, today, we are in the era of synthetic biology. We are creating life outside a human body. A test tube baby is different. A test tube baby is when you create the meeting of the two cells outside the body, but then you implant it. And then the woman gives birth. Today, a few months ago, people have created an artificial womb. So now you don't need, if you want a living being, to create another living being. That's where we have gone into. And then, of course, into AI, metaverse, AR, VR, etc., etc. And the challenge that we are facing today is if you embed AI systems into, life forms, to enhance their abilities, right? Would you then call them humans anymore? Or will you call them natural animals? So there's a big challenge in law to this sort of stuff. So this is where we are after 2 million years. And we now need to look at ourselves in the context of where we are. And when you look at this, see the interesting part. The world population has gone up, right? Today, the world population is somewhere here with a sharp rise. So therefore, there is a resource crunch. Therefore, what's the problem in front of us? Problem in front of us now is that we want more from the most. So challenge is to create more and more. Good, better, and we want to create the best. We are talking about fast, faster, and the fastest. So we are into the fastest zone. So we are into a challenge that to have this human population which has gone so high and still going high, how do we address the unmet needs of this human population? So our thought processes will have to divert our creativity into creations that will have to meet the challenge of the society that's coming ahead of us. So very important, lesser the least from these to that part. So now the challenge, therefore, when we define a problem, we have to be aware of where we are and where we want to go. That's the challenge in front of us today. And we'll have to use all our knowledge put together in a melting pot, crossbreed them, and to come out with newer and newer solutions. So only AI will not help, only IT will not help, only a machine will not help. We have to create a completely hybrid systems of that type. So very important is that when we come into creations, we can have various types. Even writing a poetry is a creation. A dance form is a creation. So there are creations everywhere. And now if you look at technical improvements which we all the time are doing, I want to build a system, say I want to go to quantum computing. So if I want to do quantum computing and develop these new concepts out there, then I'm talking about doing a technical improvement. If I'm saying that I have, for example, I want to improve the business methods, even that's an innovation. If we're talking about creating new materials, those are new innovation things. And to do this, when we do technical improvements, those technical improvements, if they have not been done before, you can protect that by using a legal tool called patents. So the legal tool patents protects technical innovations, inventions. And when you write a poetry or you have dance forms, these are creative expressions. These creative expressions are protected by another legal tool called copyright. So it's very important to realize that these are the type of things. And when you are talking about algorithms, computer associated creations, etc., they can be protected both by copyright and patents. So there's a whole range of things in intellectual property rights. And therefore, in today's education system, if we do not embed concepts of intellectual property rights, right, and how to utilize it responsibly. The word is how to utilize them responsibly. We are probably short of the expectations. So this is something very important from our point of view. And so we hear the term called knowledge societies. And in the context of AOT, it's very interesting that when you talk about AOT, we are talking about human needs and rights, pluralism, inclusion, equity, and openness is what Prabuddha Das was talking about. So that becomes the basis. And then the whole 4 key principles of freedom of expression, universal access, diversity, and education for all, what AOT stands for. And therefore, this gives rise to knowledge creation, knowledge preservation, knowledge dissemination, and knowledge utilization, which is what creates the knowledge society that we live in. So we have a huge responsibility in doing that. I won't go into too many details, but the interesting part is, today, we are standing at the edge where we are breaking the imagination barrier. The imagination has no limits, but I'm saying even if it had, we're breaking those barriers. that's where we are standing at that particular point where we are breaking the innovation barrier. So when we are talking about communication for and by all, smartphones is something that is coming in there. Sharing, caring and staying in touch, novel social media. If you look at finding places on earth, the GPS technology. Creating and controlling life, gene editing, synthetic biology. So what I'm showing you here is that taking every aspect of human society, today we are trying to address and breaking the imagination barrier. It's a huge responsibility to do something like that. So, for example, securing transactions, blockchain, ensuring energy, renewable resources. So therefore, when we are looking at opportunities are everywhere. The question is, can we identify those opportunities and find out how do we address them? And those will create the entrepreneurs of the future. Entrepreneurship doesn't come just otherwise. You need to find out, identify an opportunity, see how you will address that opportunity, and then take it to the next step. That's how entrepreneurship, etc. are built. I will, so this I have already talked about. So let me just go to what's happening today. For example, in another 10 years or 15 years, centfolds will disappear. Why? Because now we are in a position to do brain-to-brain communication. And when we do a brain-to-brain communication, all communication systems will disappear. And now imagine the system. If my brain can read your brain and your brain can read my brain, we're into a completely different zone. And this is a reality that's happening. So all our thought processes of today, of so-called, artificial intelligence, etc., are heading towards that. And therefore, the entire societal structure, composition of society, the requirements, the ethical principles, everything will change. Are we aware of that? Are we thinking in those terms? So we can't be static anymore, we need to be dynamic. As we go, and therefore, in all our thought processes, I call it the science, technology and humanities sangam. You have to bring them all together. There has to be an overlap. So everything I do, I'll have to think about various aspects, collaborate with people. So it is not possible anymore to, I will work in depth in my area, which I must, but I must also look sideways on others who have the depth in their area, and therefore not remain in two different wells, but make a connection between the wells. It's very important, and therefore our thought processes, teaching methods, our learning processes, everything has to undergo a change to that effect. Very important. And I think what I learned, that AOT, and from whatever I've heard so far, is actually heading towards something like that. Very important out there. So, just, so very interestingly, I again go back to Swami Vivekananda because I do a lot of reading on Swami Vivekananda, and I find I derive a lot of inspiration from. Interesting. He said, if we could get rid of the belief in our limitations, it would be possible for us to do everything just now. It's only a question of time. If that is so, add power, and so diminish time. And see my interpretation of his understanding of innovation. He says, remember the case of the professor who learned the secrets of making marble in 12 years while the nature took several centuries. What a fantastic thought process. And this is all I've given you the references from where I picked up these out there in context. So, why I consider, and many others consider Swami Vivekananda as a great thought leader, is because he was able to compound a lot of metaphysical thinking with a lot of, spiritualized thinking, etc., and to bring a consonance between those through. Just going further, it's interesting when he talks about knowledge, and it says, it must be admitted that though the presence of knowledge is everywhere, in every individual is an essential truism, yet the path pointed out by the great ones of earth has the glory peculiar to it, and that there is a peculiar interest attached to the transmission of knowledge. Transmission of knowledge. Very important. Though the succession of teachers and the succession of teachers and the disciples, each of them has its place in the development of the sum total of knowledge, and we must learn to estimate them according to their respective merits. Very important. I will just jump across these. I've talked about this already. I'm now coming to the last part of my talk, and that is what's happening today in India. In the last 10 years or so, very interesting things have happened. Something which, when I was doing my master's and PhD, way back when I got my degree, my PhD was in 1976. Right? When I was doing, we did not have these opportunities which you are having today. Why? Because in India today, we have felt the need that unless and until we have entrepreneurs, unless and until we have startups, unless and until we create an ecosystem, we will not be able to sustain entrepreneurship. Otherwise, there will be entrepreneur 1 or entrepreneur 2, but it won't be entrepreneur N. And therefore, the government has initiated the Startup India program. Obviously, all programs will have their shortcomings, will have their positives. But weighing all of them and balancing the act, today it's very interesting that if you want to register yourself as a startup, it takes less than half an hour. Just go into the DPIIT web, just go and do your, register yourself, and if all the documents are okay, you will get a reply back, you are a startup. During my time, all these opportunities were not there. If you wanted to set up a company, it was absolutely impossible for somebody from a middle class family to go and set up a company or something. It's impossible. Today, that's not an issue. And the moment you register yourself as a startup, there's a whole bunch of benefits that you get from the government. It's only left for us to go and exploit and take those benefits. I use the word exploit in a proper sense, in a positive sense. Exploit the opportunities that the government of India is giving us on these particular. And the website for that is www.startupindia.gov.in. And if you go to that website, you will see all the opportunities. And I picked up this morning for today's talk. I wanted to be very current. So this is at 6 in the morning, I downloaded some of the data from that site. And look at this part. Industry highlights. IT services, more than 17,900 startups, etc., etc. Top sectors, IT, which is what many of the people here are in. Right? Applied, things here. You look at all these in healthcare and life sciences out there. Startups all over the country. Will all of them survive? The answer is not necessarily. In fact, no. Maybe 10% of that will survive. But those 10% will become the leaders in the world and are becoming leaders in the world. So opportunities are there. Funds are available. I can assure you, money is not a constraint anywhere in this country. Money is, in fact, very interesting. I sit in several government advisory boards. One of the problems that we have excess of money. People are not demanding or not applying sufficiently. There's so much of money that have been allocated that they are lapsing. Comes March 31st, and the government says, but I still have so much money and we have not given them. Why? Because we are not getting quality projects. Very important. So this is one. Then look at this part, women entrepreneurs. Very interestingly, today if you start talking across the country, the number of women entrepreneurs that have come up is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. It was never such a case before. Today women are coming forward and really producing, startups, producing entrepreneurships, etc., enormously, and there is enormous amount of funds available and opportunities available. So please take that on out there. Now look at these, the studies and the national overview, the way things are all going up, and these are actual data. It's not dressed up data. As I told you, in all this, will all this survive? Answer is not near. It will not. It will be realistic. Maybe 10% will, but that's a lot. If I am a part of that 10%, I'll be very lucky to do that. I just thought, let me take a few examples. Now, for example, how many of you have not eaten Lay's chips? Or have never eaten Lay's chips? Nobody is putting their hands up. So everybody has eaten sometime at least one Lay's chip. Now let's go and explore why Lay's is Lay's. Interestingly, don't go into all the details, but I will tell you the interesting part is when you take potato, even at home, ও তেলে দিয়ে যখন ভাজি, ভাজলে কি হয়? ওই আলু ভাজাতে in different spots you get a brown spots. Yellow থাকে, হলুদ, আর অনেক জায়গায় brown spots হয়. Right? Everyone has observed. Alu bhajle. Pepsi came and said, I want to make a alu bhaja without brown spots. So they went into the chemistry. How do those brown spots get? There are certain chemicals in the potato that creates the brown spot. So can we create a potato without those chemicals? So by doing a lot of breeding and whatnot, they created seeds of those potatoes without that chemical. And what have they done? Even in West Bengal, they have gone and done contract farming. They have given these new seeds to farmers. They have told them how to cultivate it in contract farming. And now they buy the whole lot, they cut that, they fry it, and now when you go and open a Lay's packet, you will find no brown spots on that. So, innovation through chemistry, innovation through machinery, innovation through processes. That is one part. The second part, very interesting, and that they are protected. The plant variety, they are protected as their intellectual property. The frying methods and the machines, they are protected through patents. Now the interesting, when you take a Lay's chip, it is curvy like this. So to cut it in that curvy shape and to retain the curvy shape, they have filed patents. So they stop others. And the curvy shape of the potato, they are protected by what is called design registration. So with a combination of all this, Lay's chips remain as the only such Lay's chip in the market. That's my first example. I'll just jump across. The second one I will take as an example, very interesting example, especially in West Bengal, when we use the hand pump, right, to get water from the groundwater. Now that has got, of course, we know iron, arsenic, etc. Let's assume for a moment that I'm not handling that problem. But because it's groundwater, it has a lot of bacteria. So when we consume that water, treating it, what happens? what happens then is that it causes diarrhea, causes all sorts of waterborne diseases, and we lose hours of man hours, etc. So, about 12 years ago, this young person, Anjan Mukherjee, he is a pass out from IIT Bombay, and I am Bangalore. After his engineering, he joined marine engineering. I'm sorry, he was a marine engineer in the ship. So he used to go all over the world. There was not much work in the ship. So he would sit down and study and think. And it occurred to him that he has a problem he can solve this problem without using electricity, without using chemicals, without using filtration systems. He can kill the bacteria and separate them off and make water which will be 99% free of bacteria. What a fantastic. He came to me. He said, can you help me to protect this? So I asked him, what is the physics behind it? So you have to go to the fundamentals. What he said was very interesting. When you see water flowing, and if you put a stone or something, what happens? That water will hit the stone, it breaks into bubbles. And then as the bubbles travel, they burst. So what are these bubbles? Basically, this whole energy is getting now captured in these bubbles. Standard thing in physics, cavitation. So anyone who's done mechanical engineering and chemical engineering will tell you this. So you can create these cavities. Now, the point is that if you create the right type of this obstruction, then you'll be able to engineer the bubbles, the size, the number, and depending on the viscosity and other flow characteristics, you go to the Stokes equation and other things, you will be able to decide what will be the type of bubbles that you will create and when they will burst. And the interesting part is he designed that. And what happens is that particular, when the bubbles burst, it releases energy. When it releases that energy at that spot, the bacteria which is around that, they simply get knocked out, disturbed. So it disintegrates. He's created that. Right? We have filed patents for him around the world. So when Anjan did, so what do? You take the tube well, simply remove the upper flange, put this inside, close the flange. Now you pump the water through this and comes out water which is 99% free of these bacteria. What fantastic. Cost almost zero. This has been implemented. He's set up 2 factories. He's making it. He's selling it. So Anjan has done this, and therefore you can see here that then, and from where? So I asked him, how did you get this idea? He said, what happens? Then when you look at, this chingdi, right? These fishes, many of these aquatic things, have a net in their mouth. What they do is they suck the water through that. The net is designed in such a way that this actually, makes these bubbles. They burst, and in the water, whatever are the bacteria and other things, they disrupt, and those cells, this fish can eat. He got the idea from there. So you can see how, he has actually shown me the videos. So if you want, you can go to his website, and let me see if where is his website? There, www.tharaltech.com. You can please go to his website and see. He explains everything in his website. He, in fact, very interesting. Few years ago, our Honorable Prime Minister was going to Israel. So I got a call, since I work for the Principal Scientific Advisor's office. I got a call. Do you know of some good entrepreneurs who can accompany the Prime Minister to Israel to show some entrepreneurship examples and the Indian thought processes. So I recommended Anjan. Anjan actually accompanied Narendra Modi and went to Israel. So if you go to his website, you will see him, how he was demonstrating in Israel his technology, etc., etc. Today he is a star, and his technology, this machine, is today a live item which is in the Deutsche Museum in Germany. An Indian doing this. So I thought, let me give you that example. Now, interestingly, I thought the last example that I want to give you, we all take Amul. Interestingly, how did Amul start? You'll be surprised if I tell you that Amul started as a part of our independence movement. Many of you probably are not aware that it started that way. And who started it? No other than, Vallabhbhai Patel. How did he start? It started as a social movement. So this is the reverse side now. What I gave you was technology going into social part. Here's a social thing, a movement starting as an uprising, then going into technology, and then again going back into social stuff, and then becoming commerce. The interesting part is that, interestingly, when I was a little child, right, we used to have butter from a company called Polson. So those who are 70 plus years old, or nearing 80, will remember this brand of butter called Polson. It was a British brand. It used to be sold in India. And the British then brought, in the western part of the country, brought as a part of their law, that every person who has a set of cows, the milk that is produced, you cannot sell it to the local people, you have to sell it to Polson only. So Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel said, this is nonsense. You can't tell me whom I should sell my milk. So he started a cooperative in Anand. Very interesting. You can go into the details of it out there. So they did it, of collecting milk and doing pasteurization, because pasteurization technology was then known. But then came in a very interesting part. Okay, you do all this. What can you do with the milk after pasteurization? Now, if you want to make butter, everybody was used to, and if you look at the Indian cows would give not more than 3 to 5 liters of milk a day. The foreign cows, they would give about 30 liters of milk a day. Now, 5 liters of milk a day is not going to give you any great commercial advantage. So these people in Anand realized that cow milk is not going to be our solution, buffalo milk, because also it has higher fat. But the problem is, when you take buffalo milk, and that's where the technology comes in, buffalo milk, and you make butter out of that, you don't get that yellow tinge which you get from the cow's milk. And people are used to that yellow tinge. People are used to a certain flavor. So came in Korean and others, developed the whole technology to make butter look like cow butter, cow milk butter, through buffalo. That is what started Amul. So I have given details of that out there, but the interesting part is that they made this technology breakthrough, and then they went into the whole supply chain out there, and now Amul is a massive setup of this type. So what I have done, what is social impact? Over 100 million dairy farmers are in the network, Amul network. Rural employment, enhancement of rural economy, and now it has come whole range of entrepreneurs in that area who have come forth, seen opportunities, and have developed a whole bunch of startups, etc. So I will just jump this, I'll jump all this, and I come towards the end of my thing. And therefore, this is very interesting. If you look at these two donkeys, one side is science technology, other side are societal values. They're pulling each other, and as a result, neither of them are getting that. So they have to think together and see this. So what happens? They come together, go and eat here, and also go and eat there. And therefore, there is a convergence between technology and society, and unless we realize this part. And therefore, I don't want to read it, all of you are familiar with Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore's poem, which says, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world is not broken, has not been broken into broken up into fragments by narrow domestic worlds, where words come from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where clear stream of reason has not lost its way into dreary deserts, sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever widening thought and action into that heaven of, that heaven, my father and my country awake. Interestingly, in when was it? In 2005, I was addressing the World Trade Organization in Geneva, and I started with this poem. I said, what you're thinking today, this was written by Rabindranath Tagore 100 years ago. Right? So this is very important out there. And then I also used this one, which is very true for AOT as well. I won't read the entire thing, you know it, except the first, arise, awake and stop not, till the desired end is reached. I think AOT has a wide desire, ever-growing desire, and so you'll have to, I think all the alumni and the others who spoke earlier alluded to the first line in what Swami Vivekananda said, arise, awake and stop not till the end is reached or the goal is reached. Thank you very much.